go. But you know, like I told you, when we talked about Paul Harvey, there's the rest of the story. Because what Mr. Morton told you about and what he discussed with you was, I believe, 7 sentences, right? But he left out a sentence. He also left out some important facts. It's good to put 40 caliber gun up there. But see, they have access to things that we don't ordinarily have access to as common citizens. They have laboratories that do forensic testings. They have a very qualified expert. Her name is Patricia Resig. I got her information. When you represent, the proof's going to show you, a criminal defendant, you receive information supplied in what's called discovery. Okay? And she's going to be called. See, I issued subpoenas for a bunch of folks because one of the rights is that we get to subpoena folks on our team too. And I'm talking about Mr. Bassett, because my responsibility is to represent Mr. Bassett. And the scene that they didn't talk to you about, basically, is the incident that occurred earlier in the day. Now, they talked to you a little bit about it, but that's the deal where we go all the way back to Fort Promise. And we go back to, what did I tell you? The proof's going to show you. This isn't games. This isn't loyalty is everything. What it's going to show is that these young men had a rap group that they made not one, not two, but multiple videos that are out there on YouTube. Had nothing to do with gang violence. What the proof is going to show through cross-examination, we already had an opportunity to speak to the state's gang felon. He didn't understand even the basic interpretation of a song, what the title was. You saw that 00? He said 400, and he thought 400 block. But it's 4 F-O-R. I'm 400. I'm for the Tennessee Volunteers. I'm not F-O-U-R. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I don't know if it's a lack of experience thing. But that same officer, you understand, I subpoenaed him. I actually delivered a subpoena duce tecum to him today. His name is Tom Walker. So whether they call him or not, I'm going to put him up there in that box. And he's going to talk to you about gang things. And also, you know who else I subpoenaed? I subpoenaed and I'm not trying to indict women, the female at the heart of the entire matter. Her name is Jasmine Mason. Okay? Now, it's kind of like follow the bouncing ball, okay? Because you heard a lot of names. You heard, Lewis McNair, he goes by Dewey. You're going to hear all these different names. So when you get the opportunity to listen to information coming from the witness stand, you've got notebooks. Please write the names down. I've been living with this and working with this case for an extended period of time. And the proof, quite frankly, on a lot of points, we're going to agree. We're going to agree. Tragic death, we're going to agree dates, times, and places on a vast majority of things. What we're not going to agree on is who did the shooting, what the mechanism of the shooting was, and how it shook out. Now, what the proof's going to show, and this detective, he's interviewed these folks. Remember when he put the slide up there on Chris Bassett and what Mr. Bassett said, and he talked a little bit about the girl and where things happened, but he didn't get into details. That's what this officer thought. This whole gang thing, what the proof's going to show, it is to drum up this criminal responsibility idea. Because you know what? what was absent from that slide up there? See, what Patricia Ressick's gonna tell you is that .40 caliber bullet come out of the Smith & Wesson, right? But you know the slide that I'm talking about? I'm talking about the slide that said Chris Bassett said he fired a .40 caliber. Gosh, why would you leave off the term Glock? Why? When it's in the same interview that they're showing the things. When they've said all along, Glock, Glock, Glock. Why is a Glock important? Patricia Ressick, I've subpoenaed her. She's going to be here. I want her here. She will tell the truth. That's why we have TBI and these folks to do the testing. Okay? Glocks have what's called polygonal rifling. And she's going to tell you that. It's distinctive. Smith & Wessons don't have that. I'm not trying to talk down to you. It's like if you've not lived with it all this time, you don't understand. So see, you want to say .40 caliber, but that's why they test all that stuff. So this whole time that they're thinking, wow, you know, we've got a statement, someone fired a gun up in the air. This man asked him, you fired it up in the air, didn't you? Yes. I didn't want to feel like a bitch. I was scared. This man agrees with it. Goes through that whole interview. That whole interview, you're going to see it. And they're thinking, .40 caliber round, .40 caliber rounds. And it's going to match up. It's going to match up to what came out. They're going to look at it, but guess what? It doesn't have to be a rifle. It didn't match. Oh wow, we got somebody charged. We may have got the wrong person charged. So now we're going to drum up this whole criminal responsibility thing. We better go look at some other weapons. January 17th. What the proof is going to show is my client has the world champion #1 best alibi for January 17th, 2016. Bar none. By God, we might be guilty of a lot of things. But guess where we were January 17th, 2016? We was in the Who Scout. We was in the jailhouse. Okay? We had been in jail, in custody, continuous since December 18th, 2015. You get it. It's a problem for us to be out there with a juvenile in a car with us having a gun under the seat. And that gun that matches the kill shot is underneath the seat of this man, Richard Williams. We can't be there. Can we? I didn't tell you that, did I? Sometimes it's not the things that you're told. It's the things that you're not told. The proof's going to also show you that, and I've got her subpoena. She was here with her dad. We're going to have her come. She's under T. Scott's subpoena. Okay? My investigator. We get one of those too. Went out and got the information. Her name is Zenonia, or Zonia. And she's going to tell you that Richard Williams kept that gun for protection, and that was Richard Williams' gun. See how that becomes a problem? It also becomes a problem if we're going to claim gang, right? East-west, and we look at this line of demarcation on I-275, right? But what the proof's going to show you, didn't it sort of click with you? Please write this stuff down. Not when I'm talking, okay? But when you're listening to it from the stand. What the proof is going to show you, what about that 9mm? Okay? 9mm found at 3 cents. It's east-west, right? You know what I mean? Crips and Bloods, we're shooting at each other, we're shooting it up, we're doing our thing. But 9mm casings found in Lonsdale, okay? 9mm casings that match that gun found in Larry North, or in the Larry North shooting, okay? You know what I mean? They match that gun up because that's the one that shoots Larry North. Guess what? We got that A #1 alibi. I'm talking about my guy, Chris Bassett. I'm sorry, it's ruined the lifeboat for one. My responsibility in the haul them in. If they drown, they drown. If they survive, they survive. Okay? That matches up the Larry North. Where's your game thing have a problem? Right? We got the Larry North, the Malik, the loyalty is everything deal. We're going to show this picture. We're going to show it, quite frankly, to predominantly white folks. We got some other folks on here of color. We're going to show it to you. Scare you. Well, what the proof's going to show, it's a bunch of dumb kids making videos. Literally. They're not displaying guns. They're not popping caps in people. They're not doing anything. And that's what the proof's going to show you, and it ought to offend your sensibilities. But you know the problem with that 9mm gun and how that causes a problem for the state with that whole east-west thing? Well, what did they do? I mean, did they just trade out? You know what? Hey, this is our week to use the 9mm. All right, dudes, man, y'all on the west side, y'all use that 9mm next week. Why? Why? I mean, did they kill Brandon Perry? Brandon Perry's on their team. What happened? That's fine. I'll move forward. Relative to that 9mm, proof's going to show that's a problem for the state with the gang thing. Okay? Proof's also going to show that Jasmine Mason was the girlfriend of Brandon Perry. Proof's going to show that Brandon Perry, y'all going to have a diagram, was the cousin of Christopher Bassett. That proof is going to show that Brandon Perry went over to Western Heights and visited Jasmine Mason. Now, here we go again, another name, because we're going to hear the name Andrew Cornelius. And the proof is going to show that Andrew Cornelius is Jasmine Mason's baby's daddy. He's in prison. But his relative, brother, cousin, close relative, is a fellow by the name of Paul Cornelius. Andrew Cornelius, the proof will show, and Jasmine Mason, her baby daddy, they're estranged. They don't get along. He's in prison. That's what the proof's going to show. And the proof is going to show that Jasmine Mason allowed her child to go over to Paul Cornelius and Aisha Ross. Proof will show that Aisha Ross is Paul Cornelius' girlfriend for a party. And that Aisha Ross and Paul Cornelius let Jasmine Mason's child speak to her nana, her grandma. That didn't sit well. The proof will show that Jasmine Mason texted Aisha Ross, woman to woman, why did you do that? Why did you have that discussion with my child? The proof's going to show that Paul Cornelius took Aisha Ross' phone from her and text back an inappropriate response, a profane response, like, bitch, what you talking about? Okay? Generally, that word doesn't play well. The proof's then going to show that Brandon Perry is there. He takes Jasmine Mason's phone. And what happens? We get a testosterone contest going on, okay? It's like two people butting heads. I'm going to mess you up, I'm going to mess you up, boom, 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 okay? Long story short, proof's going to show Brandon Perry picks Jasmine Mason up. She's going to be here to testify. Drives her over to braid some hair. Paul Cornelius is there in Western Heights. Okay? Following me? Now you understand when I'm talking about the boy-girl thing, right? And kids. Paul Cornelius sees Brandon Perry driving the gray Lexus. Okay? he hollers out, and this is quotes. Again, I always put this stuff in quotes because I don't want to later hear it back. "What's your bitch-ass nigger doing in that car? Tell him to get out." Pulls his shirt up and shows a gun. Brandon Perry don't get out of the car. Proof will show that he screams at Jasmine Mason. This all happens before any of these other events. They leave this out. And says, "Get in the car." She gets in the car. They leave. Jasmine will tell you that he drops her off. And then the proof will show that shortly thereafter, surprise, Paul Cornelius gets shot at. Then you get to the 911 call that we're going to play that occurs in which Alicia Harris reports that Brandon Perry's driving around with kids in the car shooting at somebody. Now you go from Fort Promise to Dallas Street and you get to Brandon Perry's mama being shot. And that's part of the rest of the story. And what the proof is going to show is that unlike these other kids, Chris Bassett got some college, decent kid. Brandon says, "Man, I want you to go with me." And then those pieces start falling into place. But what all of the statements, including Investigator Leffler, who's sitting right here in front of you and who's going to testify, says, is that my man, Mr. Bassett, shot him in the head. And Patty Ressick is going to testify and back me up. And then you're going to have all this confusion with these shell cases. Okay? A lot of that's noise. But the 9mm case is not going to fit with the state's idea of what happened. So what I want you to do is return a verdict of not guilty. If there was a crime of criminal stupidity, my client might be there. But criminally responsible does not it make. You can will somebody all you want to be a gang member because their man's going to testify or he will be cross-examined by his previous testimony that they don't have a gang file on him and that my man Chris Bassett is not a gang member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Lee, would you like to make an opening statement?
Ladies and gentlemen, Kipling Colbert is not a gang member. Early April 2015, Kipling Colbert, Chris Bassett, Richard Williams, and a few other early friends. They went to school together. They want to be rappers. They get together and they make a rap video. They're not even singing, they're lip syncing. They don't just make one video, they make 3. Put them out on YouTube. They want to be rappers. And because it made those videos, the state's going to try to get you to believe they're gang members. For these young men, 20-something years old, barely 20. You hang out together, they're friends, you go to school together, they just want to be rappers. They lip sync 3 videos. And the state of Tennessee wants to tell you, they're gang members. That's it. They're gang members. They made a video. They lip sync to a video. And that qualifies. The tragic shooting of Zaevion Dobson happens 8 months later. 8 months. 8 months after this shooting happens. There's no connection whatsoever from 3 videos these young men made from shooting of Zaevion Dobson. We talked earlier, more dire, about reasonable doubt. Where is Kipling Colbert? The state has to prove beyond a doubt that Kipling Colbert is responsible for the death of Zaevion Dobson. Zaevion Dobson. The state will not be able to prove that. There will be no evidence of Kipling Colbert being there. The state will tell you because Kipling Colbert made a video that he's a gang member and his friends are responsible for the shooting. And I would ask you to use your common sense and your logic and find Kipling Colbert not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Mrs. Rogers.
Everybody has a story that they're going to be telling through this, and we've heard about how we're not going to hear stories, but we're going to hear stories. And there were a lot of shootings that night. There's an east-west thing. We're going to hear about gangs. We're going to hear about all of these things. What I want you to do is concentrate on actual evidence, on direct evidence that links people to crimes, not circumstantial things. And circumstantial evidence is evidence for sure, and the judge will instruct you on circumstantial versus direct evidence. But with regards to Mr. Williams, it's all circumstantial evidence. And you saw they linked these guns to him, but there's a gun found under a seat in a car that he's in with 3 other people, not his car. No fingerprints, no DNA on that gun that matched to Richard Williams. There's another gun that is found in a park a couple of weeks after the shooting of Mr. North. And they link that to that shooting. It's a totally different gun. And they try to link that to him. No DNA evidence, no fingerprints on that gun either. And it was found 2 weeks or some time after a search of that park had happened that very night. That's a totally different shooting, by the way. We are here about one shooting. A lot of bullets, several different guns, but we're here about one incident that involved people on that porch. And the state has the responsibility to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard Williams was there and that he was shooting and that he's criminally responsible or caused the death of another person. And what I'm asking you to do is to hold them to that responsibility and to evidence. Don't get caught up in the story. Don't get caught up in because these people are friends. Must have been there. It must have been him. And it's going to be a hard thing to do because there are 3 different defendants sitting over there at that table. And they were friends. And so it's going to be hard to separate that, and that's what the state wants you to group them together. And defenses are going to be, it wasn't me, it was him. You're going to hear Mr. Bassett in his statement admit to being on the scene with his cousin Brandon Perry, who's kind of the centerpiece of this whole thing. Brandon Perry ends up being shot that night. Brandon Perry's mom gets shot that night. Brandon Perry goes over to do something about it. And his cousin Christopher Bassett was with him, and he admits to being there with a gun, with a 40 caliber gun. Then later on, when they find these other guns, because there are guns around, everywhere, then they try to link that to my client, Richard Williams, and say, well, he must have been there. So he must have done something. And all I'm asking for you to do is to listen to the actual evidence. Don't get caught up in the story, pointing fingers at who was there and who wasn't there. Listen to who says they were there. Look at the guns that were used, that were found, and see if they're actually linked to anyone, or if Richard Williams made bad choices with regards to who he hung around with regards to who he was a friend with. And I think that that's what the evidence is going to show, is that Richard Williams made bad choices about the company that he kept. And he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that does not make him a murderer. That does not make him criminally responsible. So I'm just gonna ask you to look at the actual evidence. And if they cannot convince you beyond a reasonable doubt, which I do not believe they can, because there is no direct evidence linking Mr. Williams to that crime, you have to find him not guilty, and I will ask you to do so.
Thank you, Mr.